it's a very fake narrative, false narrative that has been going on for years because a lot of people are making money out of it. People losing their limbs, people losing their homes, people losing their shops, people losing schools. We've had severe radicalization. We've had young boys like Hosef Ashraf being dragged into a car and then his throat slit. He's 19 years old and then he's thrown on the road. We've had Ishrat Munir Bhatt being dragged into the forest and on camera while she's begging for her life, she's shot. Think about the mental condition, the trauma that these people face. The world needs to stand with India because the world needs to understand that we're surrounded by the most rogue nations of the world, I'm sorry to say this, which can do anything for money.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Western Spirit. I'm Ariel Whitman, and today we have with us someone very special. Yana Mir is from Kashmir, and she's someone who has, I would say, gotten a lot of attention over the past few years. She's an activist, she's a journalist, and I think she's the first YouTuber from the Kashmir first female YouTuber from Kashmir, explaining the situation from her perspective, which is very unique. Yana, which is something I didn't know, she's a Muslim, and yet that is why a lot of her positions surprised me, which made it even more interesting to talk to her. So first of all, before we explain, I'll just bring Yana into the conversation. Yana, it's a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much, Ariel. It's a pleasure being on your show, and thank you for that wonderful introduction that you did of mine.
Of course, and I missed a lot of stuff out, so we'll get to it as we go along. Let's start with Kashmir and where we are today. I was just thinking about what we should start talking to, and let's put out the facts as they are right now. A few months ago, we had this war between Pakistan and India over something that happened in Kashmir. So maybe you can talk to us about what led to the war and what's happening today, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty stuff that's behind the scenes, so to speak.
As you must be knowing, and a lot of your viewers already know, that India and Pakistan are disputing over a region, and that region is called Kashmir, where I belong to. And so, yes, it's a very challenging situation to live in a region, to belong to a region which is consistently being disputed by two countries for so many years. But then, you know what I'm trying to say, because you're also in a situation like that. You're in a country that has been facing the same problem for so many years, and you know that the impact is maximum on the people living there. So yes, the dispute is all about Kashmir, and for some reason or the other, the dispute keeps coming up between the two countries. And it is, you'd be surprised that the border is just less than 800 kilometers, which we have with from Kashmir, between Kashmir and Pakistan. There is another border between Jammu and Pakistan, but that is like much smaller, about 200 kilometers. So let's just say the entire Jammu Kashmir border with Pakistan is about 1,000 kilometers, and all the dispute happens there, and so much of it. The issue has been internationalized so much. I don't know why Pakistan doesn't let go of it, because it has its own piece of Kashmir. Kashmir has been divided into so many zones, and Pakistan has got its share, and it calls it free Kashmir, although it
Is it free?
not really, because it interferes in its elections, and everything that happens there is as per the command of the Pakistan Parliament. So I don't think that it's free in any way. It's just free by name. See, for example, how do you call yourself free if you have been given the right to choose your leader, which after 5 years of of the abrogation of Article 370, finally we had our own elections in Kashmir. We have our own chief minister. We have our own elected leader. What else? How do you call yourself free if you have, like, for example, in Israel, you have the right to speak in Hebrew. Your language is given priority. But in the so-called free Kashmir of Pakistan, they force everyone to speak the national language of Pakistan. Whereas it's the other way around. In the Indian-administered Kashmir, we speak our own language. So everything that's Kashmiri is in fact preserved. We have a cultural department. that tries its best to preserve our culture. So is a whole lot of difference. You cannot call that land, and India as a whole, it's a secular democracy. So I don't think a person can be more free than as being a part of a secular democracy. And Kashmir is a part of a secular democracy. How much more free can it get? So it's a very fake narrative, false narrative that has been going on for years because a lot of people are making money out of it. Like how the I'm sorry to say, I understand that people are suffering in Palestine, but you know, there are a lot of agencies around the world that are collecting money in the name of Palestine, and that money doesn't even go to the Palestinian people. It's just a money making business. That's what Kashmir has become. It's very unfortunate.
But wait, can I just? It's very weird because in the West, the narrative is that it's a Muslim versus Hindu thing, and so all Muslims. This is what I'm not. I assume it's not true, just because most narratives seem to be not true these days, but about everything. But one of the things that we keep that the way I looked at it as a young child growing up in the U.S. and then in Israel was that the Hindus support the Indian side and the Muslims support the Pakistanis, obviously. And then people like you, you're Muslim, and you're telling me that the Indian side is freer for Muslims than the Pakistani side. Is that why are we taught to think this? And is it true? Because I assume it's not true then.
Um, do you think it can be true? I would agree with this narrative if India was a Hindu country. India just has a majority of Hindus, but it's not a Hindu country. It's a secular democracy, like I already said. Secularism is instilled in its constitution. And anyone who's not secular, let me make this very clear through your channel, whether it's a Hindu who says, I don't want to be secular, I want to be a radical Hindu, or a Muslim who says, I don't want to be secular, I want to follow the Sharia. Well, both of them are not qualified to be called Indians because they're not secular. So to be an Indian, quintessentially, you need to be secular, or you're not Indian from within. You're just faking it. You're just living in the country. You're just dishonoring the country and its principles. And then you even go on global platforms and then you say things like, oh, this Hindu versus Muslim thing. There are a lot of journalists from my country. I know that. They're making a lot of money by following the narratives of certain, it's very unfortunate. Some follow Qatar's narrative. You know what I mean by Qatar's narrative? The Al Jazeera narrative. You know about it because Israel has also been victim to that, right? So some follow the Qatar narrative. Then there are also some. I would like to tell you there are also some weird characters who say that if the Muslims got Pakistan carved out of India, right? Because India broke into two pieces many years ago. One became the Muslim Pakistan, the other became secular India. So there are some elements who say, oh, then we should have a Hindu India as well. So they want a separate Hindu country as well. So I'm not talking about those radicals. They don't make up India. Neither the Hindu radical. When I say radical, I don't mean terrorists. An Indian quintessentially cannot be a terrorist. They can be extremist in their thoughts, but Indians, that's the difference between Indians and Pakistanis that the world needs to understand. If you see someone who's of our color and speaks our language, but is terrorizing the country that he is in, whether it's the London tube bombing, whether it is the Paris stabbing, uh, or the pedophilia cases in UK, whatever, any terrorizing activity, our color, our language, then it's a Pakistani. It's not an Indian. Yes.
So, what you're saying, I'll just ask like this: where is it better to be a Muslim in general, maybe a Muslim woman in particular, because that's what you are, in Pakistan or in India? Where is it more freer, better, more prosperous, easier to live, more, where do you have more opportunities as a Muslim in Pakistan, which is officially a Muslim country, or in India, which is, like you said, a secular majority Hindu country?
I would say a secular majority in the country. I am definitely safer, and I've said that at the UK Parliament, which the world couldn't believe it. Because when I said it, I said, listen, I am not like Malala, and I'm never running away from my country and then staying in another country. and then parroting some kind of narrative, doing social media toolkit work. No, I'm not going to do that because I'm very happy in my country. I do travel a lot for work, but it's not like there are no opportunities in my own country. And yeah, see, for example, I am wearing the hijab now. No one in my country is going to force me to either wear the hijab or not wear the hijab. It's entirely my call. That is what a secular country looks like. Whereas in Pakistan, it's different. See, in Pakistan, the Muslims themselves are not safe, although it calls itself an Islamic country, because there is continuously conflicts between Shia Muslims and Sunni Muslims. And then there is a continuous conflict between Pashto Muslims and the Punjabi Muslims. These are deadly conflicts. I'm not talking about, the little bit difference of opinions that may, emerge between Hindus and Muslims of India. Those are like little conflicts. Those are not conflicts. Those are, how do I say, this is difference of opinions, which I also, by the way, witnessed when I was in Israel. There are a lot of Israeli Muslims who are so loyal to Israel, so loyal to the IDF. But yeah, but they do have some difference of opinions with the governance. But they say that doesn't make our loyalty any less. We're still loyal to Israel. Just because we're Muslims, we are not going to just give away our loyalty to Palestine. Although India has very good relations even with Palestine, we recognize Palestine as a country. I am not going to say anything bad about the Palestinians. But what I'm saying is, it's the same case with the Indian Muslims as the Israeli Muslims. Yeah.
So, Yana, we had this whole conflict, and how did people in Kashmir, which that was the area, if I remember correctly, to remind me, there was a terrorist attack where Islamist extremists came from Pakistan, murdered a bunch of people, tourists in, I think, Kashmir, right? And then the war started. Um, how did the people in Kashmir, specifically the Muslim population, react? How did it affect them when this war was happening? What did the majority of people, your neighbors, what did they think of what was happening? How did they, where were their feelings at?
It's unfortunate that Pakistan tries to make it look like a war about religion, but it's not. It's just territorial war. And what the attack, first we'll start with the attack on the tourists. What that really did to the Kashmiris, if Pakistan thinks that the Kashmiris are very, very impressed with this move, then I'm sorry. It was a very big setback to our economy because, Kashmir's bread and butter relies heavily on tourism. And if you are going to attack the people who give us business, you're going to attack the very people who come to us lovingly. They want to experience our hospitality. They want to enjoy the beauty and nature in our state. And you enter there uninvited. And you put a blot on our hospitality. You put our economy on a setback. And you think we're going to support you just because you're Muslims. I mean, how silly can that be? How silly is that? And to be honest, if you've seen videos of that dreadful attack, you will see Kashmiris, the tourist guides, and all the Kashmiris who were present during that attack. They were trying their best to save the tourists. They were even taking the bullets on their own selves. They were carrying like 2 terrorists on their backs, and they were trying to take them to safety. And that's exactly what happened in the late 1980s and early 1990s when the Kashmiri Hindus were being driven out by Pakistani terrorists. The Kashmiris were struggling to save the Hindus, and getting hit with bullets and getting burnt, trying to save the Hindus. So we have also been victims of this terrorism, of this bullying that is being done by Pakistan. And fortunately, that has increased, Ariel, that has increased since 2023, I'll tell you, since Bangladesh, the new government in Bangladesh, they have unbanned a very dangerous Islamic ideology. It's like a very dangerous organization called the Jamaat-e-Islami. That was banned in India, that was banned in Bangladesh, but when the new government came in Bangladesh in the late 2023, they unbanned the Jamaat-e-Islami. So this same Jamaat-e-Islami organization which has its well, a headquarter also in Pakistan. But you see, for so many years, it was alone. It had no partner in crime. But when the Bangladesh unbanned its Jamaat Islami, so now the two partners in crime are trying their best to create chaos in India. And it's very unfortunate. See, with China, we have a very good relation on the face of it. But from inside, China does take India as an economic barrier, in the world market. So China is happy to help these downtrodden nations in terms of money, in terms of any kind of equipment to create chaos in India. Because, see, to be fair to China, India is its economic rival. So it's going to do that. But it's just that where is the humanity? Why do these countries accept the funding? Why do these countries accept to create chaos just for the money? It's so sad. They're creating chaos in a neighboring country like India just because for the money that China is giving them. It's really sad.
So wait, that was the actual attack, and you're giving us the backup. But what happened during these skirmishes, the wars, whatever you want to call them, themselves? So they're above your heads, basically, theoretically, but maybe even literally. There's planes going back and forth, bombing each other, and it's all happening. First of all, because of what happened where you are, but also right, you're at the border between the two
Yeah.
countries. So, what does the average Kashmiri Muslim think about it? I mean, like where do your I don't what is the feeling there? How did you feel? How did your neighbors feel? What was happening during this war in terms of your daily lives? It's something that I've never even thought about until I started thinking about what to ask you.
It was really bad. Okay. It was, I mean, I don't know what to say. But it had been bad even before 2019, when there used to be shelling from Pakistan. What they used to do is they used to shoot mortars and shells into our side that used to destroy our homes, our schools. People used to lose their limbs, and that had stopped because there was a ceasefire agreement. But then that became tenfold during the war. You can understand people losing their limbs, people losing their homes, people losing their shops, people losing schools. But we are grateful to the Indian government that they decided to step back after a few days. It was not, uh, you know, it was not longer than a few days. Otherwise, the destruction would have been unimaginable, especially on the border sides of Kashmir, more than the city, the borders. The people living there, they've really suffered a lot. And every time this happens, the government compensates them, the government gives them money to rebuild their homes, to rebuild their shops, and it happens again and again. Think about the mental condition, the trauma that these people face. And yet, Ariel, they are the sweetest people on earth, always smiling. If you see, especially the Kashmiris and the Pahari people who live on the borders, with Pakistan, they are. I mean, it's really sad. I mean, I know some people who live there, and you would not believe. Like 2 years ago, I went and spent time with in their house. I went to the Sharda temple. It's a very beautiful temple that has been built over there by the locals. It is apparently an important place for worship for the Hindus. Uh, it actually went to Pakistan when the border was drawn, so they made a replica of it. So I went to see that 2 years ago, and I stayed with these really nice people. And then 2 years later, the war happens. The house that I stayed in is completely in shambles. You know what I'm saying? It's gone. Like when I spoke to them, of course, there was no contact, there was no communication. The communication lines were all blocked out for a few days. And then finally I got in touch with them. They said, our house is no more. The house you stayed in is no more. And so the neighboring houses. It's really sad.
Yes. Can I just ask you something weird that as you're talking about, if I, during a time of peace, when there's a ceasefire like now, is it safe for me to come to Kashmir, or should I be worried of like terrorists, like what happened to these tourists? Would someone like me who looks, well, maybe not me because I'm visibly Jewish, so I don't even probably be more dangerous for me than people who aren't visibly Jewish. I have a yarmulke and all that on. But would it be dangerous for people to come to be as tourists in Kashmir now?
It's a very challenging question. Before the Pahalgam attack, I used to say, look, whatever happens in Kashmir, okay, no one's ever touched the tourists. And that was a fact. And that was a fact. But after the Pahalgam attack, I'm not going to say that Kashmir is not safe for tourism. No. I just don't want to put anyone in trouble. But at the same time, I want to praise those people, those Indians who still love, I mean, because India is divided into so many states, right? So the people from other states of India who still love Kashmir and Kashmiris so much, they still come for tourism. It's not like tourism is finished. People still come because eventually it's one country, we are one people. We're not going to stop, we're not going to get scared and stop going to a certain place because, of foreign tourism. Foreign terrorism, from terrorism from coming from foreign soil. You know, we we have. When I say we, I mean the Indians as a whole, like one diaspora, right? So they have not stopped coming. The tourists are still coming. Let me tell you. But I'm not going to take it on myself. I can give it in writing that a Kashmiri will never harm a tourist. That is something I can give in writing. You know, but the foreign terrorists, I'll tell you what the problem is, Ariel. They speak our language. They look like us, and they have names like us. And when they come and hide between us, and we don't know ourselves, they're hiding in our jungles. They're hiding somewhere. And let me tell you, Kashmiris don't give them logistics. We don't give them, we don't give them space in our homes. All of that. That used to happen like many years ago. That used to happen like 10 or 15 years ago. It doesn't happen anymore. Okay? Because at that time, the Kashmiris were confused. They didn't know whose side were they on. They didn't know who was on their side. So the maximum they may have done is given them logistics like food and probably a place to stay. But these people were so merciless that they raped the daughters of the very people who gave them place to stay in the house. They shot, they tortured the people in whose homes they lived, at gunpoint. So the Kashmiris have understood the hard way that who's actually with them, who's protecting them, and who's there to just create, to terrorize. So Kashmiris have understood this lesson a long time ago, and no one gives these terrorists any kind of logistical support. So I can say for sure that a Kashmiri will never harm a tourist. You know.
Yeah, but you could never know about the terrorists. But that's in a lot of places true also here. But also, why was it important to you, by the way, to at the British Parliament to talk about Malala? Or I don't remember her exact name, but she's been in the news for years at this point. Um, I always thought of her as being at least the way she was presented to us in the West, as a sort of hero that fought for rights in Pakistan and now is in the West fighting for rights and has this organization. And I assume at this point has a lot of money because people like me know about her. So why was it important for you to speak out? I guess,
About Malala.
yeah.
Yeah, it's because Malala has also involved herself in a lot of toolkit narrative building, especially against India and especially when it comes to Kashmir. So I did not take that very nicely because I don't think that if she's ever never been to Kashmir, she's never been to India, then she should not be speaking like that without knowing the truth. So I am against anyone. I mean, I know she's gone through her own share of challenges. And as a woman, I understand whatever she's been through and I sympathize with her. And I wish and pray that it doesn't happen to other women, what she went through before, rescuing herself from Pakistan. But then why support the narrative of the very country that has tortured you? Why do that? That is not right because that is the country that has killed so many Indians, including Kashmiri Indians. And if someone out there without knowing the truth is going to support assassins, assassins of my country, then of course I'm going to speak out against that.
Wow. Um, you were in Israel not too long ago, and you went to a bunch of places here. I assume you went down south to where October 7th, all the
Yes.
kibbutzim and the border. Did you probably went up north? I'm not sure, to where in the Golan where the Druze kids were killed. If tell me if I'm right about all this. Those are the main things of the war here. When you saw what happened on October 7th, and then going there to see where it actually happened and understanding how it unfolded, did you feel a little bit that some of this stuff, maybe not on a large scale, but on different scales, is something that you are able to identify with being in Kashmir, people going over the border, doing all these horrible things, hurting women, assaulting women, killing, murdering, kidnapping, all this is something that has happened. Do you see a little the comparisons to what's happening from Pakistan into Kashmir over the years?
Absolutely, absolutely. We've had uh, severe radicalization. We've had young boys like Joseph Ashraf being dragged into a car and then his throat slit. He's 19 years old, and then he's thrown on the road. We've had Ishrat Munir Bhatt being dragged into the forest, and on camera while she's begging for her life, she's shot, point blank on her forehead. And that comes in camera, and that is made viral in our society. We've had Kashmiri Hindus being attacked, shot, killed in their own shops. There's this one Kashmiri Hindu who used to give free medicines to the poor. He had a pharmacy, and he was attacked. He was shot dead. And we've had so many cases. I mean, if you know about, I don't know, I don't even want to start talking about Girja Tuku because I start crying when I see. There was this movie that was released a few years ago. It was called Kashmir Files. I couldn't sit through the end. I couldn't, for God's sake. There was one more movie that released. It was a horror movie, and they didn't want to focus on the terrorism so much. They wanted to make a horror movie. But even that, I could not sit through the ending. I can't. I mean, okay, those were things that happened a long time ago, maybe before you or I were born, but that haunting still remains, and the fear is still there. And one odd incident still happened. A girl got shot in her house. Somebody just walked into her house, told her nephew, "Go call your cousin sister down." And he was 10 years old. He went, he called his cousin sister down. She comes down the staircase, she's shot dead. This happened just a few months ago. Why? Because she was a YouTuber. She used to make YouTube videos. Okay, so yes, so we've had this, and there's just no way that anyone's going to ever agree in Kashmir that we need to be part of Pakistan, because all this kind of ideology comes from Pakistan. In fact, we've had even many religious leaders, who didn't want to completely surrender to Pakistan's narrative. And even they got shot dead, even though they were religious Muslim leaders. They got shot dead. Like Abdul Ghani Lone Sahab. He realized that, okay, see, if a country or if a region wants freedom, okay, on any grounds, it definitely does not want to divide its people. It definitely does not want terrorism in its land. It just wants freedom on maybe for cultural identity purpose. So there used to be a time, a long time ago, during Abdul Ghani Lone Saab's time, when people used to think, okay, we think that maybe Kashmir can do better if we're independent. So he used to think, okay, Kashmir should be independent. But when he saw that Pakistan started, this was a long time ago, this was like in the 40s or 50s, maybe 60s actually. And when they saw that Pakistan has started interfering, Abdul Ghani Lone Saab, I think 70s or 80s, I'm still very confused, but that was a very long time ago. But when they realized that Pakistan's interference is creating terrorism, Pakistan's interference is creating a kind of extremist, uh, conservative Islam, which is not even Islam. We come from the same line, right? Like the Abrahamic religions. You know for a fact that the Holy Quran is not actually such a conservative, such an extremist book. It is not, in fact. But these people have their own interpretations. They have their own version of Islam, and they were trying to force that on the Kashmiris, and that's why even our religious leaders, even they were not accepting. Even they repelled the Pakistani narrative. So there is just no way that uh, that we were going to accept Pakistan's interference in our land, because all this terrorism that comes from there, that impacts our social life, our economic life, that gives us so much trauma. There's just no way we're going to accept that.
And also, so when you're in Israel, I'm just one last question about that. What did you think about Israel in the sense of, you mentioned there's about 2 million Muslims citizens in Israel. That a lot of them have respect the country. They most of them really are loyal citizens, overwhelmingly. A lot of them go to the IDF, to the police force here. They're the integral part of the Israeli economy. I mean, my mom's a pharmacist, and almost everyone she works with are Arabs, which are overwhelmingly Muslim in Israel. Um, but how did you think of it? Was it different than the way you thought of it before you visited here? What were your reactions?
I mean, I'm a Muslim, and the Holy Quran commands the Banu Israel to stay in their holy land, you know, and not leave. So, so I believe that all the Muslims living in Israel also believe that. 34% of Israelis are Muslim and get the same rights as the Jews of Israel. These are the things that I noticed. And that is why, see, the loyalty, it doesn't come by a gunpoint. It does not come by giving money. It comes because of love for your country, and that comes because of equal status. So it's the same thing. Yeah, so when I came to Israel, I saw the exact. I also happened to meet some Muslims who were terrorized by Hamas, who have suffered loss of life and loss of family, loss of property, and have got a lot of trauma because of Hamas. And definitely for them, the biggest threat, the biggest nightmare would be, to become part of Palestine, because they know that the Palestinians are also suffering at the hands of Hamas. So they feel very safe and very happy that they are in Israel. And do you know what really touched me? What really touched me about the Israeli people, the Jews, is that they had won Gaza, they had won the Al-Aqsa Mosque, fair and square in the war. Yet they handed it over to the Palestinians. They said, "This is yours. This is yours. You know, we'll not come inside because you're Muslims and you don't want Jews to come inside. No problem. We'll not even come inside. We'll just pray from outside. We'll touch the wall and go. We'll not even come inside." Who does that? Does the world know about it? Nobody knows about it, Ariel. It is a gesture. The world is all the time talking about Al Ahli Hospital. Even our prime minister raised a lot of concern. Why is the hospital being bombed? And I also condemn that move. Everybody knows about it, but nobody praises the good moves. Nobody praises the humanitarian stuff that the Jews have done for the Muslims, for the honor of the Muslims. And I think these stories should be brought out. I did my best to bring these stories out from Israel.
So we appreciate that. Another thing that I grew up in the U.S. and um, I was in America at 9/11, and I actually saw the Twin Towers on fire from my classroom window in September 11th. And the teacher, I grew up in a religious school, he got angry that we were watching from the window, so he shut the window off so we can study Torah. I grew up very religious, and then when we opened the windows, they were gone. It's a traumatic experience. But then America went to war in Afghanistan, and Pakistan was its, I guess,
Ally.
natural, I would say just an ally of necessity, because it was on the border there, it was being used as a launching pad to a lot of the stuff that was going on. And America was helping Pakistan with a lot of other stuff in exchange for this. And this has gone on ever since, pretty much. And in the last war, in the last wars between the two countries, we've seen this, that the US is unwilling to take a stand against Pakistan, almost in any, it seems to me, in any situation. And you would think that America would be more inclined to be friendly with the Indian government than with the Pakistani government, who's basically run by a military, and that's very radical. And if not the military, the people, the political parties are even more radical. So it's not like there's any good options in Pakistan. And yet America keeps on equivocating and saying like both sides are the same and all this kind of thing. And you were also talking about the British Parliament, the same type of narrative. How do you first of all, do you think I'm right in the way I'm explaining it, and why do you think it is it really just because they need Pakistan and Afghanistan? They're not there anymore, they're not in Afghanistan anymore. Why would they keep on doing this kind of like taking both sides?
Taking both sides. Yeah, they try to be the big brothers of the whole world. Well, in that case, if you want to play it so diplomatically, then don't just talk, you know. POTUS needs to be told, don't just talk. Do something, you know. How about, for example, maybe helping India rebuild the infrastructure in Kashmir? Because India has been doing it with its own money. India has been, you know, all the time. Like if you see, for example, Pakistan, after the 2005 earthquake, and I'm talking about 2005, 20 years ago, okay? Nothing has been rebuilt in the Pakistan side of Kashmir, you know? So, well, if the Pakistanis are so dumb so as not to question their military, that hello, you know, why don't you like, because it's the Pakistan is run by its military. I'm sorry to say, because the government doesn't really make any decisions. Okay, so well, fine then. If America wants to play so diplomatically on both sides, then play with money. Why with words? We don't want your words, you know. But we'll be happy if you help us rebuild Kashmir. We'll be happy, you know. So yeah, just words are not going to help anyone. You know, this kind of silly diplomacy, you're just coming, you're just trying to show we are on this side. No, wait, we're on that side. We're on their side. No, we don't care. You know, talk with money, then we'll talk. Otherwise, you are of no importance. Sorry to say, you are of. And then the fact that we buy oil from Russia, that irks them. You know, there's a lot of stuff. And then the fact that on the face of it, we're good with China. We refuse to be enemies openly with China. That irks them. You know,
But
on
the
the face of it.
Pakistanis are like China's best friend. China basically finances Pakistan at this point. They're not a Pakistan has nothing without China financially, and so like
So,
I would
so
just say
China
this.
is, yeah, China is doing it. China's thing is, see, it's just that India refuses to be enemies with the enemies of the USA. So the USA is always going to try and play these diplomatic games with India. We're not going to be enemies with Iran. We're not going to be enemies with Russia just because Big Brother says so. You know, what have you done other than just talking? What mediating? We don't need you. We've got enough mouths in our country. We can mediate ourselves. You know, so that's yeah. I think America is just unnecessarily, and then they keep coming in and saying that we stopped the war because we
Did they
threatened
stop
India
the
with.
war?
No, of course not. Why? I mean, like, they are already been threatening us with tariffs just because we're not stopping buying oil from Russia. We don't care. We didn't stop buying oil from Russia. Why would we stop a war just because they're threatening us with tariffs? That's silly. We stopped because, first of all, it wasn't war that India wanted. India was just doing precision strikes. You know, they have a terror infrastructure very much flourishing over there. Okay, where they train youngsters into, they first radicalize them, they fill them with a lot of hate, give them drugs, and then they train them, and then they send them, you know, there's those launch pads of terror. So what we wanted to do is attack those launch pads of terror. And then what the Pakistan military was trying to do was use this as an opportunity to publicize China's defense goods and defense equipment. That look, oh, look, we shot down Indian jets and we did this and we did that, because all they wanted to do was raise the shares of Chinese defense companies, take advantage of the war. You know what I'm saying? So, and we don't care. We just wanted to destroy what we wanted to destroy and get out of there. So that's what we did. It was as simple as that. But the whole, like everyone taking, trying to take credit out of this, and the Chinese defense company shares going up and all that, for God's sake,
But you know,
all you
Yana,
are playing with the lives of people. Yeah.
yeah, I just want to say one thing, and I told this to, we interviewed about a month and a half ago the former head of the equivalent of the CIA of India, Vikram Sud. And one thing that I told him, and I think it's something that I'll say again and again, and it's very annoying to me. The Americans understand politically, even the right wing, especially who's in power now, that China is the biggest global threat to the US. And if that is true, and it is true because everyone accepts it also. So if you believe that's true, then your natural instinct should be to bring India into the American camp. That should be the number one objective on the Asian world, even in the world stage, not just Asia. India is a
Yeah.
huge country with a giant economy that's growing very fast, and you can take the stuff out of China and move it into India in order to diversify out of China. If you want to fight China really on the global stage, instead,
Absolutely.
what the Trump administration is doing is pushing India into China's arms. So instead of saying, you're buying oil, let's say from Russia, or you're doing this and this with China, we'll give you cheaper oil. America has a lot of oil. We'll give you this, we'll give you entrance into our markets at better rates. We'll take off tariffs on you in order so that we can work together in order to move off of China. Instead, they're doubling down on punishing India for lots of different things. You're never going to agree with everything India does, but if you really want to counterbalance China, you would go with India. But they're doing
Absolutely.
the exact opposite. And then we saw Modi going to China to meet with China in and be friends with
Yeah.
China. And it's not a surprise because he needs to think about diversifying out of America instead of
Absolutely.
moving. So it's just a very weird situation, and the Pakistani thing makes it even more difficult uh, to be. And I would just say one thing, last thing, is also the moral issue, where there's one country that's pushing a radical Islamist terrorist agenda, harboring terrorists that murder civilians, innocent people, men, women, and children, and the other country is fighting back against that, and you're equivocating between the two. And that should never happen. Like, maybe sometimes out of necessity you just don't want to say anything, but if you're already going to say something, the good guys and the bad guys should be obvious to you. And to
Absolutely.
me, that's something that in Israel we suffer from a lot over the world, all over the world, the way people look at the situation. You were here, you saw it. And so when I see it in other places, we should call it out too. So
Yeah.
that's the main thing that gets me very annoyed.
Absolutely. Agreed.
Good. So Yana, one last thing. What is happening now in Kashmir? How is life going on? The ceasefire. I heard people saying that a lot of analysts are saying that you guys just had. I don't think. I'm not sure if they're from Kashmir, but there was just a terror attacks in India.
Yeah.
We have a lot of analysts saying that the next war is inevitable. It'll happen at some point. What are the feelings going on now?
India is definitely in a vulnerable position. Okay, we also lost our Tajikistan air base, which had made us very powerful in Central Asia previously. Although talks with Taliban and Afghanistan are underway, that we might get the Bagram air base. If that happens, then India repositions its power in Central Asia. That would be a plus. Secondly, all of India's defense. India is, I think, the third or fourth strongest military in the world, and all of that is indigenous. Okay, we are indigenous equipment manufacturers, except for some imports maybe from Israel and a few countries, but the majority of our defense equipment, defense setup, structuring is all indigenous, and we are still the fourth strongest army, or the, I think, third strongest military in the world. And although we are vulnerable, we are also capable of defending ourselves. But I think the world needs to stand with India, because the world needs to understand that, first of all, we have a thriving democracy with so many, I mean, internally, with so many, like Israel is just either Jewish or Muslim, right? We have so many cultures, so many religions, so many languages, so much diversity in our population as it is. Okay? in India, within India. On top of it, we are surrounded by rogue nations. Whether even if you talk about Maldives, even if you talk about Bangladesh, even if you talk about Afghanistan, Pakistan, we're surrounded by the most rogue nations of the world. I'm sorry to say this, which can do anything for money. So anyone can give them money, go infiltrate India, go become proxies, and go create chaos in India. So the world needs to stand with India at this point of time. It's easy for Mr. Big Brother to say, this is not right. Oh, we're on their side. Oh, no, no, this tariff, that tariff. Who do you share your border with? Canada? You're safe, dude. You have the sea on two sides, and there's a little Mexico on your south, which can't do anything to you. You just build a wall, and that's enough for it. And you have a peace-loving Canada on top of you. And you are sitting there giving judgments on India? I mean, come on. If you really are a big brother, show your big brotherhood. Stand with India. I think the world needs to stand with India because we are vulnerable, but we are also one of the most progressive. We are a democratic nation. We are fighting the war on climate change along with the world. We are also, I think, the second or the third fastest growing economy in the world. Despite all these threats on our identity, despite all these threats on our soil, this is where India is. I think the world needs to stand with India. For God's sake, instead of giving judgments and making it so trivial as if it's all about Hindu and Muslim. Don't trivialize the topic, for God's sake. Understand how we are geographically and strategically positioned, and try to be there for us, because Indians can do wonders.
Shalom, Israeli friends. I'm Nikos from the Ayn Rand Institute. For 2 years now, you have been told that your grief doesn't matter, that your struggle to survive is a, quote, genocide. And you've been told that you must sacrifice yourselves for those who wish to destroy you. So it's time we asked, what kind of ideas produce such poisonous views? What motivates those who stand with your wannabe destroyers? And I know something about all this, because for decades I used to believe those same anti-Israel myths. But some years ago, I decided to focus on the truth instead. And since then, I've been committed to fighting by your side. On December 19th, join me and a group of speakers who will make the case for Israel's right to exist more forcefully than you've ever heard before. Click the link to register. Remember, soldiers and students attend for free. See you in Tel Aviv.
Yes, and I will just say to finish off that after October 7th, India was there for us. I did a few articles in the paper about, I don't know if people know, after October 7th, Palestinians stopped working in Israel just because of the war, security, and there was a giant shortage of workers, and the people who came to work in Israel during the war, as the missiles were flying over, were Indian people. Thousands of Indians came to Israel to work here, and the Indian government supported them and helped them get fast-tracked visas into Israel. Um, it was obviously work, but it was also, during a tough time. And India, for the first time, was unequivocal in their support for Israel in this war and did not rush to be against Israel at every turn like other countries. And so, and in the war with Pakistan now, the Indian ambassador to Israel has already admitted, even though it was secret, but he admitted it, so I can admit it, that a lot of the weapons used and the weapon systems were Israeli. So there's a lot of cooperation between the two militaries and countries on intelligence and on weapon systems. So we are good friends, and
Always
I
will
think,
be.
yes, and I think
Inshallah.
morally it's the right thing to do. Morally, but it's helpful, tactically and as strategically between the two countries. But just on a moral level, one side is a evil. I would say not evil, but like maybe evil, harboring evil people,
Yeah.
harboring evil ideas, people who want to do harm to innocents, and the other side is our friend and has a lot of our shared values, and that's where we should be. So Yana Mir, extremely honored to speak with you finally.
Thank
Um,
you so much, Ariel.
you have to watch over yourself. You told us about these people coming in and killing people, so please take care of yourself. Please be safe,
Thank you.
and hopefully we'll see you soon in Israel again.
Thank you so much, Ariel. Allah Ta'ala is always with those who stand with their country. because Hubul Watan min al Iman, which means that love for your country is your first love as per our religion. So I'm sure I'm always going to be safe. And thank you so much for your good wishes.
Thank you, Yana.